Welcome to Sinister States.
The night I followed my GPS into the forest, I remember thinking how normal everything felt. That's the part that stays with me. There was no storm rolling in, no flickering streetlights, no uneasy feeling crawling up my spine. It was just another ride request at the end of a long shift. I drive evenings mostly, picking up airport runs, late dinners, the occasional drunk college kid who insists on telling me about a business idea that will never exist. That night had been slow. The kind of slow where you start calculating whether the gas is even worth it. The request came in at 11:42 p.m. pickup location, a small residential neighborhood on the edge of town. Destination, a set of coordinates instead of an address. That wasn't unusual anymore. Some people drop pins instead of typing street names. The name on the account was Mara. No profile picture. 5-star rating, but only 3 previous rides. I hesitated for maybe 2 seconds, then accepted. 3 rides meant new account. New accounts meant unpredictable. But I needed one more trip to hit my bonus tier for the week. Her street was quiet when I pulled up. The kind of suburb where the houses look identical in the dark. Each porch light casting the same yellow circle onto trimmed lawns. She was already outside, standing at the curb, holding nothing but her phone. No luggage, no purse, just a long gray coat that reached below her knees. When she opened the back door and slid in, she didn't greet me. I waited for the usual confirmation. Mara, she nodded once. Her voice, when she spoke, was soft. Please just follow the GPS. I pulled away from the curb and checked the mirror. She was looking straight ahead, not at her phone, not out the window, just forward. Most passengers scroll or text. She didn't move. The GPS guided us through the neighborhood and onto the main road heading north. The city lights thinned gradually, replaced by stretches of dark highway lined with industrial buildings and empty lots. I tried to make small talk. Headed home. No answer. I assumed headphones, even though I didn't see any. 10 minutes into the drive, the route recalculated. The screen flickered briefly before redirecting us off the highway onto a 2-lane road I rarely used. It wasn't marked as closed or restricted, just unfamiliar. I felt that small tug of annoyance drivers get when the app changes its mind. This the right way? I asked, glancing back. Yes, she said, almost immediately. The speed of her response felt rehearsed. The road narrowed as we continued. Streetlights disappeared entirely. Trees replaced buildings, tall and skeletal, their branches arching overhead like ribs. My headlights carved 2 pale tunnels through the darkness. The GPS estimated arrival in 18 minutes. I zoomed out on the map. We were heading toward a large green area labeled simply as State Forest. No campgrounds, no visitor center, just empty space. Are we meeting someone out there? I asked lightly. Silence again. I've driven into rural areas before. Farmhouses, remote cabins, even construction sites. But usually there's some indication of life. Mailboxes, fences, a faint porch light in the distance. This road felt abandoned. The asphalt was uneven, cracked in places, with weeds pushing through seams. My tires hummed differently on it, a low vibration that I could feel through the steering wheel. The forest thickened on both sides until it felt like we were driving through a tunnel made of trees instead of concrete. Another recalculation. The GPS voice calmly instructed me to turn left onto an unmarked path. I slowed instinctively. The road was barely visible, more like a dirt trail carved between trees. This doesn't look right, I said. She leaned slightly forward, just enough that I could see her face in the rearview mirror for the first time. Pale, expressionless. It's right, she said. Please don't stop here. The emphasis on here made my foot hover above the brake. I turned onto the dirt path. Gravel crunched beneath the tires. Branches brushed against the sides of the car with soft scraping sounds that made my shoulders tense. The GPS showed we were still en route. 7 minutes remaining. No signal bars on my phone now. I checked instinctively. Nothing. The app still functioned, but my data connection had dropped. That wasn't entirely strange in remote areas, yet it added weight to the silence. We drove deeper. The trees grew denser, blocking even the faint glow of the distant town behind us. It was just the headlights and darkness. I noticed a smell then. Damp earth mixed with something metallic. Not strong, just present. I rolled my window down slightly, thinking maybe the air outside would feel fresher. It didn't. It smelled older, heavier, like soil that hadn't been disturbed in decades. How much farther? I asked. Almost there, she replied. The GPS estimated 2 minutes. The dirt path began to slope downward gently. My car's suspension creaked over uneven ground. I felt a growing urge to turn around, to claim car trouble, to end the ride and leave. But pride and curiosity held me in place. I didn't want to appear paranoid over nothing, and she hadn't done anything overtly threatening. She had barely done anything at all. The map suddenly zoomed in on its own, centering on a small clearing icon ahead. The voice instructed me to continue straight for 500 feet and then stop. That was it. No building marked. No driveway. Just, you have arrived at the center of dense forest. My heart rate ticked up despite myself. This is the spot? I asked. Yes, she said. The clearing appeared gradually between the trees, a patch of open ground illuminated by my headlights. It wasn't large, maybe the size of a basketball court. The dirt looked disturbed, darker than the surrounding forest floor. I eased the car forward until the GPS chimed softly. Arrival. I put the car in park, but kept the engine running. Here we are, I said, attempting normalcy. There was no response. I waited for the sound of the door handle, the shift of weight, the click of a seatbelt unfastening. Nothing. I glanced at the rearview mirror. The back seat was empty. For a moment, my brain refused to process it. I twisted around fully, staring at the back seat as if it might correct itself under scrutiny. The seatbelt hung exactly as it had before. The door remained closed. No movement in the reflection of the side mirrors. The interior of the car was silent except for the engine idling. Mara, my voice sounded smaller than I expected. No answer. I checked the passenger side floor. The other seat. Nothing. It was as though she had never been there. A cold pressure spread through my chest. Not sharp panic, but something denser. I reached for my phone. The ride was still active. The timer counting. Her name displayed at the top of the screen. I swallowed and pressed complete trip. The fare calculated instantly. $73.40. I hadn't even noticed how far we'd driven. Before I could process anything further, the app vibrated again. A notification, passenger rated you. 5 stars. I stared at the timestamp. 11:59 p.m., exactly the moment the GPS declared arrival. My hands were shaking now. I forced myself to breathe steadily. There had to be an explanation. Maybe she had slipped out quietly while I was staring at the screen. But I would have heard the door, felt the shift. The car wasn't that soundproof. I stepped out slowly, the forest air wrapping around me like damp cloth. My headlights still illuminated the clearing. I walked to the rear passenger door and pulled it open. The seat was cold. Not just cool from night air. Cold in a way that didn't make sense after 30 minutes of someone sitting there. That metallic smell was stronger outside. I turned in a slow circle, scanning the tree line. No movement. No footsteps. No path leading deeper. Just trees standing still, as if watching. Then my phone vibrated again. A new ride request. Pickup location, exactly where I was standing. Passenger name, Mara. Estimated wait time, 2 minutes. I felt something shift inside me then. A quiet understanding that whatever had happened wasn't finished, I was still alone in that clearing, at least I thought I was. The vibration of the phone in my hand was almost comforting, a reminder that the world outside the forest still operated on familiar rules, fares, GPS coordinates, timers. But even as I stared at the screen, a seed of dread had planted itself deep in my chest. I didn't touch the accept button. Not yet. My instincts screamed for retreat, yet every rational part of me asked why I would abandon a legitimate fare. It was just a ride, wasn't it? A routine that paid the bills and kept the engine humming. I backed the car out of the clearing slowly, tires crunching against the loose gravel and dirt. The rearview mirror reflected the same empty space where Mara had been. Nothing out of place except for the lingering metallic scent. The forest seemed unchanged, indifferent to the strangeness that had unfolded. I kept glancing at the GPS, the blue arrow pointing to the same coordinates where I had just stopped, like a phantom marker. The app still displayed Mara's name at the top, 5 stars shining innocently beside it. Turning back onto the narrow trail, I drove cautiously, scanning the edges of the headlights for any hint of movement. Shadows stretched between the trees, shapes folding into the darkness. My pulse quickened when the GPS recalculated, indicating I was to take a sharp right onto an even narrower path I hadn't noticed before. This path was nearly overgrown, branches scratching against the sides of my car. The thought crossed my mind that no other cars could fit here, that no one could easily find me if something went wrong. A shiver ran down my spine. As I drove deeper, the forest thickened. The canopy above blocked out the moon, leaving the world around me lit only by the cold white of the headlights. The smell persisted, a mixture of earth, metal, and something organic. I tried to rationalize it, telling myself it was the wet soil, the decaying leaves, or perhaps a small animal. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. I had smelled decayed metal before, work sites, dumpsters, the back of hospital corridors, but this carried a weight, a presence that was different, something intentional. The GPS guided me further in, and I noticed the silence had become almost oppressive. No crickets, no wind rustling through leaves, no distant cars. It was as if the forest had paused to observe. I considered stopping, turning around, even calling someone, but my phone had no signal. The ride app functioned, but text messages, calls, or any chance of help were impossible. A tight knot of anxiety formed in my stomach. I was alone, in the middle of an unfamiliar forest, following coordinates given by a ride request that had already gone wrong once. The trail bent sharply, leading to a small clearing. Moonlight barely penetrated the dense canopy, and the headlights illuminated something unusual, a series of small stone markers, arranged in a rough circle. They were weathered, moss-covered, uneven, as though they had been there for decades. My heart hammered against my ribs. My logical mind tried to create an explanation, a ritual site, a forgotten grave marker, a maintenance boundary, but each option felt hollow. Something primal inside me said to leave immediately. I stopped the car at the edge of the clearing. The GPS instructed me to pull forward slowly, so I obeyed, keeping my hands on the wheel. Every muscle in my body screamed for me to run, but curiosity held me captive. That's when I saw it, Mara. She stood in the center of the stone circle, her coat hanging loosely, hair obscuring her face. She didn't move at first, just waited, perfectly still. My instincts screamed that something was wrong. The forest air was unnaturally cold here, and the metallic scent was stronger, almost cloying. "Get out of the car," she said, her voice soft but commanding. It wasn't angry, it wasn't playful, just an absolute certainty that demanded compliance. My hands shook on the steering wheel. I was torn between obeying and fleeing. Something about the way she spoke made hesitation feel dangerous, Even though logic screamed that she was just a passenger, I opened the door slowly, the gravel crunching beneath my shoes. Every step toward her felt weighted, like walking through molasses. The stone circle seemed to radiate a subtle hum, a vibration that I could feel in my chest and through the soles of my shoes. Mara didn't move as I approached. The closer I got, the stronger the metallic, organic smell became. It filled my nostrils, made my eyes water, but I couldn't look away. She raised a hand, pointing to the center of the circle. My heart raced. Against every instinct, I stepped forward. The moment my foot crossed the threshold, the GPS in my pocket vibrated violently, a shrill alert that made me jump. The app showed the ride as completed, but the timer was still running, counting upwards. The coordinates on the map flickered rapidly, as though the forest itself was interfering with the device. The wind picked up suddenly, whipping through the trees, carrying the scent of rot and metal deeper into the clearing. Mara didn't move. She didn't blink. Her figure was almost translucent under the weak moonlight, like a shadow caught between dimensions. I felt my pulse hammering, the rational part of my mind screaming that this was impossible, that I was imagining it. Yet every sense told me otherwise. Suddenly, a soft rustling from behind the stone markers drew my attention. My breath caught. Something else was there. Not human, not entirely. The shadow moved with unnatural speed, sliding between the markers, never fully visible. I took a step back, my foot crunching gravel, and the shadow froze, as if aware of my presence. Mara's head tilted slightly, just enough for me to see her eyes, pupils blacker than the night, reflecting light like polished obsidian. The rustling intensified, surrounding me from all sides. I felt the hairs on my neck rise, the muscles in my arms tensing involuntarily. My mind raced. I tried to recall my engineering classes, the rational frameworks I had relied on to understand structural failure, load calculations, predictable systems, but none of that helped here. Nothing about this forest, this clearing, or this figure made sense. The laws of normalcy didn't apply. Mara took a step toward me. Her movements were fluid, unnaturally so, like she was gliding over the forest floor. I wanted to run, but my legs refused to respond. The shadow flitted closer, a dark, indistinct form that moved in tandem with her. Every instinct screamed to flee, yet fascination, terror, and some inexplicable compulsion held me rooted. "I need you to follow," she said, her voice calm, hypnotic. Not a command, not a threat, something beyond words. She extended a hand. My mind screamed no. My body obeyed. I stepped closer, each movement deliberate, careful. The shadow flitted ahead, always just out of reach, guiding, hurting. I noticed the forest had changed subtly. The trees were taller, their branches bending inwards, almost forming a tunnel above. The ground beneath my feet felt softer, almost spongy, as if absorbing sound and light. Another step, and I realized the path back had vanished. The trail I had driven in on was obscured by trees and undergrowth. The forest felt alive, shifting imperceptibly as I moved. Every instinct I had screamed that I was being herded, manipulated by forces I couldn't understand. Mara didn't glance back, didn't acknowledge my hesitation. She simply moved forward, hand extended, eyes fixed ahead. We entered a second clearing. This one was larger, encircled by ancient oaks. The ground was littered with leaves, and at the center, a shallow depression contained water reflecting the moonlight. I noticed immediately that my reflection in the water didn't match my body. My eyes, my mouth, my posture. It was close, but subtly wrong, almost as if a shadow of myself existed within it. Mara knelt at the edge, pointing to the water. "Look," she whispered. I peered in. The reflection rippled unnaturally. The water was still, yet the image moved independently, showing me a version of myself I didn't recognize. Panic gripped me. I stumbled back, and the shadowy figure from earlier flicked into the water, dissolving into the ripples. Mara remained kneeling, calm, almost expectant. I tried to speak, to demand answers, but my voice faltered. The forest seemed to hold its breath. The rustling, the metallic scent, the oppressive silence, all intensified. My pulse thundered in my ears. Mara's hand remained extended, unwavering, a silent invitation into the unknown. "Do you trust me?" she asked, eyes lifting to meet mine. The question was simple, yet the weight of it carried centuries, unanswerable in any rational sense. I nodded before I realized I had. Her smile was faint, almost imperceptible, but it carried warmth amidst the terror. She rose, and the shadow reappeared behind her, coalescing into a vaguely humanoid form. The forest seemed to react, branches bending, leaves whispering, as though acknowledging her authority. My heart hammered, mind racing with questions I had no hope of answering. I stepped forward, following her. One step, two steps, deeper into the forest, into the night, into a reality that no GPS, no app, no urban logic could have prepared me for. The forest seemed endless, yet every step I took felt purposeful, as though some unseen force was guiding us through the tangle of trees and undergrowth. Mara moved effortlessly, her figure a faint glow under the sparse moonlight, while the shadow followed silently, stretching and compressing as it navigated the uneven terrain. The metallic organic scent persisted, lingering in my nostrils and making each breath feel thick and heavy. My rational mind fought against the surrealism, but reason was a fragile shell in this place. We arrived at a ridge overlooking a valley I hadn't noticed before. The ground sloped downward, covered in thick ferns and twisted roots. In the center of the valley lay a cluster of abandoned buildings, half collapsed, their walls covered in ivy and dark streaks of age. Faint lights flickered inside, as though candles or lanterns burned despite the distance from civilization. The valley emitted an unnatural hum, a low vibration that resonated in my chest. Mara pointed toward the buildings and gestured for me to follow. As I descended, the shadow darted ahead, vanishing and reappearing with unnatural speed. Every instinct screamed that danger lurked in every corner, yet I continued, drawn by a mix of fear, curiosity, and some inexplicable need to uncover the truth of Mara and this forest. My footsteps were careful, deliberate, avoiding the loose roots and rocks that could betray my presence. The valley was silent except for the occasional creak of a broken window shutter swinging in the wind and the hum that seemed to emanate from the very earth beneath me. The first building we reached was a small structure, resembling an old garage or storage shed. Its door hung askew on rusted hinges. Mara stepped inside without hesitation, and I followed, my hand brushing against the cold, splintered wood of the doorframe. The interior was dark, but the faint moonlight revealed objects scattered across the floor, broken tools, rusted containers, and piles of decayed leaves. The air was thick, carrying the metallic organic scent that had been trailing us. In the center of the room, a small pedestal stood, carved from stone. On it rested an object wrapped in a faded cloth. Mara gestured for me to approach. My steps were slow, almost reverent, as if touching the pedestal could trigger some unknown consequence. The cloth seemed ancient, frayed at the edges, but beneath it, I could sense a weight, an importance that defied description. My curiosity overpowered fear. I reached out, and as my fingers brushed the fabric, the forest outside seemed to exhale. The hum intensified, vibrating through my bones. The moment I lifted the cloth, the object beneath revealed itself. A small, intricately carved figurine, greenish in color, with eyes that seemed impossibly deep, reflecting light as though alive. The figurine radiated a subtle warmth, almost imperceptible, but enough to make the hairs on my arms stand on end. Mara's expression was unreadable, but I could sense approval, or perhaps expectation. The shadow hovered near the doorway, its form shifting and twisting like liquid darkness. I felt compelled to touch it fully, to hold it, but a warning flared in the back of my mind. Something about this figurine was not just ancient. It was aware, responsive, reactive to human presence. My hand trembled as I lifted it, the weight more than I expected, solid yet oddly organic. A sudden rush of air swept through the building, rustling the leaves on the floor, and the hum outside deepened into a low, vibrating roar. The walls seemed to bend inward slightly, and the shadow outside pressed closer, almost eager, almost predatory. Then, as if responding to my hesitation, the figurine pulsed with light. Not harsh, not blinding, more like a heartbeat, rhythmic, almost alive. I felt an energy coursing through me, a connection that defied all understanding. Mara stepped closer, placing her hand gently on mine. Her touch was grounding, reassuring, yet also a reminder that I was not in control. The shadow lurked, and every instinct screamed that this moment balanced on a razor's edge between revelation and catastrophe. The room seemed to dissolve around me. The walls, the floor, even the air itself shimmered, revealing glimpses of a larger forest beyond the physical one I had entered. Trees stretched impossibly high, their branches entwined with stars and moonlight, forming shapes that no human mind could fully comprehend. Shadows moved independently of any light source, flitting between dimensions, whispering secrets just beyond hearing. Mara's eyes met mine, calm, steady, as though she had traversed this space countless times before. I realized then that the figurine was a key, a bridge between realities, and that Mara was a guardian, or perhaps a guide, showing me paths I had no right to traverse. My mind struggled to process it, fighting between disbelief and the undeniable reality before me. The metallic organic scent intensified, sharp and cloying, as though the forest itself was acknowledging my presence, testing my resolve. The hum became a voice, faint yet insistent, threading through my consciousness, urging me to follow, to understand, to become part of something larger than myself. Mara turned, moving toward a hidden stairway carved into the hillside behind the shed. The shadow followed, slipping silently over the steps, anticipation in every motion. I carried the figurine carefully, feeling its pulse in my hands, the rhythmic beat syncing unervingly with my own heart. The forest seemed alive, the air thick with a tension that made every nerve stand on end. The stairway led down into darkness, a tunnel carved from earth and stone, the walls damp and cool to the touch. At the bottom, the tunnel opened into a vast cavern. Stalactites hung like jagged teeth from the ceiling, dripping water into shallow pools that reflected the dim light emanating from the walls themselves. Bioluminescent fungi painted the cavern in faint hues of green and blue, giving the space an otherworldly glow. Mara walked ahead without hesitation, the shadow moving like a silent sentinel beside her. My breath echoed in the cavern, loud and human, the only sound against the unnatural quiet that permeated the space. The path twisted and turned, revealing chambers filled with artifacts, old and new, some human, some inexplicably not. Ancient tools, carvings, and books rested alongside items that defied logic. Fragments of machines with impossible geometry, jars containing liquids that shimmered with internal light, and strange symbols etched into the stone walls. I realized that this place existed outside time, a repository of knowledge and experience spanning centuries, Dimensions perhaps, curated by beings whose purpose and power I could scarcely comprehend. Mara stopped at a circular platform in the center of the cavern, the shadow folding itself into the wall behind her. The figurine pulsed stronger in my hands, the beat now almost insistent, echoing in my chest. The air was thick, electric, charged with anticipation. Mara looked at me, her gaze steady, eyes reflecting the bioluminescence, and spoke softly. This is the choice. Understanding comes at a cost, but fear is the greatest barrier. You decide if you step forward or turn back. I hesitated. My entire life had led to moments of calculated risk, of measured danger. Engineering calculations, late-night rides, minor confrontations, but nothing had prepared me for this. Fear clawed at me, primal and unrelenting, yet curiosity, the desire to understand, to witness, overpowered the instinct to flee. My hand tightened around the figurine, feeling its pulse against my palm, and I nodded. Mara extended her hand again, and I stepped onto the platform. The cavern responded immediately. Lights surged along the walls, tracing intricate patterns that shimmered and twisted in impossible geometries. The shadow coalesced into a figure beside her, its form more humanoid than before, yet still fluid, still alien. The figurine's pulse synced with the rhythm of the cavern, and a low hum filled the space, resonating in every bone in my body. Suddenly, visions flashed before me. Moments from my past, my fears, my regrets, and my desires played like fragments of a film, interspersed with impossible images of other worlds, creatures, and civilizations. Time seemed to collapse, stretching and contracting, pulling me into a state where past, present, and potential futures overlapped. I felt the weight of countless experiences, lives lived and lost, all threading together in a tapestry that my mind could barely comprehend. Mara's voice cut through the visions, calm and guiding. Focus. Choose what you carry forward, what you leave behind. You are here, but the choice is yours. I tried to respond, but my voice was drowned in the symphony of sights, sounds, and sensations. The figurine's pulse quickened, urging decision, a beacon through the chaos. My heart raced, and I realized that understanding required surrender, a release of fear, a willingness to embrace the unknown fully. I extended my hand toward the center of the platform, placing the figurine down. Instantly, the cavern shifted. The visions coalesced into clarity. I saw Mara not as a passenger, not as a guide, but as a sentinel, a guardian of thresholds, a being that existed to challenge and transform those who encountered her. The shadow merged with her form, no longer separate, a testament to the unity of knowledge, fear, and awareness. The hum faded, replaced by silence, profound and complete. The forest beyond the cavern seemed distant now, almost like a memory. I felt changed, expanded, as though a layer of perception had been peeled back, revealing truths I had never known. The figurine, now inert, rested at the platform's center, a relic and a reminder of choice made and paths taken. Mara stepped forward, her gaze meeting mine one last time. "You see now," she said softly. "Fear is the cage. Choice is the key. Remember that." And with that, she and the shadow faded, dissolving into the air like mist, leaving me alone in the cavern, holding the figurine, carrying the weight and understanding of the experience. I stood in the cavern alone, the bioluminescent glow fading as my eyes adjusted. The air was still, heavy with the scent of damp earth and that same metallic organic trace that had followed me from the forest. Every instinct screamed to leave, to return to the world I knew, yet a part of me lingered, reluctant to abandon what I had glimpsed. The figurine rested in my hands, now inert, but its presence was a reminder. a tether to something far beyond the ordinary, something that demanded vigilance and respect. I retraced my steps through the winding tunnels, the echoes of my movements amplified in the vast chambers. The artifacts, the impossible machines, and the remnants of other worlds seemed less threatening now, but their weight in my mind was undeniable. Each step was deliberate, careful, as though the cavern itself could sense my intent and respond to hesitation or fear. The stairway led me back to the forest floor, where the moonlight filtered softly through the dense canopy. Outside, the forest had shifted subtly. The familiar paths seemed both recognizable and foreign, as if the landscape remembered the passage of the sentinel and now reshaped itself around the intruder. The air carried the faint hum of distant energy, a reminder that the boundaries I had crossed were not permanent, yet their imprint would linger. I moved toward the edge of the forest, guided by instinct and memory, careful to avoid the alleys and ridges that had previously hinted at unseen dangers. As I emerged, the city lights of the outskirts flickered in the distance. Oakland seemed unchanged, yet I knew it was different. My perception of danger, of the ordinary, had been altered. Streets I had walked or driven countless times now held potential for the inexplicable. Every shadow, every sound carried the weight of possibility. The figurine, once a pulsing conduit of experience, now lay silent in my pocket, but I felt its influence still resonating through me. I returned to my car, the streets quiet and almost welcoming in their normalcy. Every reflection in the rearview mirror, every passing figure, seemed ordinary, but my mind registered subtle anomalies, the brief hesitation of a shadow, the glint of eyes not quite human. I started the engine, the hum of the motor grounding me in the familiar world, yet I knew the forest, Mara, and the shadow existed beyond that normalcy. They were reminders that the line between reality and the otherworldly was thinner than I had ever imagined. Driving home, I avoided familiar dangerous routes, steering clear of alleys, trash-strewn streets, and dimly lit parks. Each decision was calculated, informed by both fear and understanding. Though my passenger had vanished, the lessons remained. Fear, choice, and awareness were intertwined. Recognizing what was unseen was as crucial as navigating the tangible world. I kept the figurine close, a symbol of both knowledge gained and the responsibility it carried. When I finally reached my apartment, the city asleep around me, I set the figurine on a shelf, its green eyes catching the dim light. I sat in silence, reflecting on the journey, the disappearances, and the moments where the ordinary had collided with the extraordinary. Each memory pulsed with clarity, teaching me to balance caution with curiosity, fear with understanding. Sometimes, late at night, I feel the forest calling, not with sound, but with the subtle vibration of memory, of choice, of the paths I had walked. Mara's lessons linger, a reminder that what we see is never all that exists. Every ride, every journey is a threshold, and some passengers, some experiences, vanish not out of malice, but because they belong to another plane of reality, one that intersects with ours only fleetingly. That I no longer drive at night, nor do I seek the thrill of the unknown without purpose. Yet the forest, the cavern, and Mara remain within me, shaping how I move through the world. Awareness, choice, and respect for the unseen have become guiding principles. The figurine rests silently, but its pulse, once overwhelming, now resonates subtly within my consciousness, a constant reminder. Vigilance and curiosity must coexist. Some nights, I glance in the mirror, half expecting a familiar presence that no longer appears. But even in emptiness, the lessons remain. The forest taught me that vanishing is not always loss. It can be revelation. Every shadow, every whisper of wind, carries meaning if one is willing to perceive it. And sometimes, the line between passenger and guide, reality and otherworldly, is thinner than we can ever imagine.